Welcome back. We're going to do another 3 sketches. Just like in a previous part. If you haven't watched that, you can click on the little thingy top of the video, or there's a link in the description. And we're going to do the exact same thing. This is the same session, I just cut it up in 2 parts to make the video not too long. I hope you tried it for yourself. Maybe if you have, maybe you want to let me know how that went in the comments. If you want to post any images, if you're comfortable with that, you can also do so in my Facebook group. But I can also understand if this is something that maybe you want to keep to yourself. It took me quite a while to be able to share these type of sketches, these type of exercises, really. Yeah, it's one thing sharing sketches, and there's another thing sharing, the result of, practicing in this way. It's just, I don't know, it feels more intimate. This whole, this whole practicing basically without a guaranteed result. And as I'm saying it, I understand how contradictory that sounds. But I think many of us can relate to with things that we call practice and things that we call sketches that are actually coordinated artworks in a sketchy style. Okay? And it's perfectly fine to call that sketching or to call it practicing. But we also need to remember that sometimes practicing and learning things is just, it's not always pretty. It's not always supposed to be pretty. And it took me a little while to realize that a lot of artists make really funky mistakes, except they never post them. So you can sort of get the impression that it's not okay to do that. Yeah, I would actually love to see more stuff that maybe you throw away or gets put on, the pile that nobody ever sees. Just correcting the hand here. And this arm, this is one of the hardest things for me to imagine in my mind is perspective. There is, when things are moving, when things are turning towards the viewer, you get a thing called foreshortening. And for me, that is one of the most difficult things to have to imagine how that works. So there are tricks for it that you can practice. But even with those tricks, it is hard. So doing this makes me realize what are the things that maybe I would like to practice with a reference photo. Because then you can either take a photo of yourself and see how the joints behave in relation to each other. And for me, that makes it easier to work if I just need a reference photo for that one part. Like the elbow here in this image. That is something that I would consider taking a reference photo for, and then practicing that area alone, which is a ton easier than having to draw the entire figure from a photo. So maybe that's the tip that I want to give you, to isolate the areas that you struggle getting them from your mind, from the image in your mind, and then isolating that area and practicing only that. Drawing the back, I find that very hard, because for me it's such a vast area without any obvious landmarks. The front of the body essentially is easier because you have breasts, you have nipples, you have a belly button, you have a pubic area, and all of those areas are, well, they're visually quite obvious. So you can use them as, almost like pointers. But the back, for me, is just a back. It's a really vast area of bone and flesh and obviously muscle, but with very little landmarks, as I said. So the thing that I struggled with the most when I tried to learn figure drawing is I did a lot of tutorials that are about the spinal cord. So what people would do is they would draw the spinal cord as in an action line, and then put all the features of the body on that spinal cord. Well, I don't know how they do it, but for me that ended up being just a chain of disasters. And it made me realize that drawing an accurate spinal cord, drawing that action line, actually requires a ton of experience. And I don't blame people for making tutorials based on their experience, not at all. But I didn't realize that it was not because I was stupid or lacking some sort of quality that I couldn't do it. It was just a lack of experience. Okay, so if you've ever struggled with that, you're not alone. The other thing that obviously I think a lot of people who start out with figure drawing, we try that, is measuring in heads, right? You know the creepy illustrations that put the head into the body? Like the body is, I don't know, 8 heads or 7 heads. You see all these heads stacked? That works in a frontal view. Yeah, or front view or side view. But whenever the body is turned, twisted, bent, you're going to end up with very strange looking stacked heads. So I think what worked for me eventually was simply measuring. Measuring on the reference photo. You can hang it on your wall and measure with a pencil, whatever way you want to measure. And I think after a while, you get a sense. You get a sense for how big things are in relation to the rest. And then keep in mind, like I said in the first video, keep in mind your joints. The joints are very obvious things that you can focus on. And what you can do is you can check them against your own body. In the previous sketch, you don't have to sit like that and take photos of yourself like that. You can actually try and sit like that and see where your knee ends up. Is it above the shoulder? Is it below the shoulder? Is it equal to the shoulder? And information like that can give you a basic understanding of how that body works. So the previous pose was actually, I cheated a little bit. That was actually a pose that I painted before, again from my mind, but still. I painted it before, I think a couple of months ago. So let's do a pose, the last one, that is a little bit more complicated. And also probably the first time that I don't start with the shoulders. Legs are difficult. I don't know why. It's probably because I'm a portrait painter, and then, it's logical to have a certain understanding of the upper body because it's closer to the face, right? I don't think I've ever done a portrait that includes a full figure because that's just not a portrait anymore. So my my understanding of how shoulders and the neck and maybe even the rib cage rotates in space is a little bit better than the lower body. The other thing that I realized as I'm drawing is how long legs are. they're, they're much longer than what I'm drawing right now. This is just an understanding of how things are in a three-dimensional space. And you can tell right now this leg is way too short. No matter how tall or short you are, but that's okay. Or so I keep telling myself. You have to keep telling yourself that it's okay. I think that's very important. It's not always fun to have to do this alone. I recently went to a figure drawing night somewhere with a model and other people drawing. And, initially, I can't even remember the first half. That's how stressed out I was. But then afterwards, people got together a little bit, and I actually talked to one person, which for me is like 100% beyond my comfort zone. And she was like, oh yeah, I feel really uncomfortable because I keep thinking everyone else is better. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, me too. And even though it's stressful to talk to people, at least for me, it's good to learn that you're not alone. Beyond Facebook and beyond, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love you, and you are literally my the closest thing to I have to a group of friends. But even for people like me, real life is different. than online. And sometimes you need a little bit of real life stimulation to keep going. But if you don't have that, if you don't have a drawing group every now and then, it is important to keep telling yourself that it is necessary to mess things up if you want to learn something. It's not a waste of time. It's not, what I often think, well, I could have done something useful in this time. Now, I was talking recently also to my friend, Anna, and she said something that really stuck in my mind. She said, the thing with not having enough time to do art is not that you don't create enough art, but it's that you don't have time to fail and you don't have time to mess things up. When you're limited in the time that you have to create art, you often feel like you have to create something worthy in that time. And if anything, if I want to convey anything in these 2 videos, is that it is incredibly important and perhaps even vital to learning is make mistakes. Really, there is very little that will jumpstart your experience and also the way that you retain information other than make mistakes. So please go out, make mistakes. You don't have to share them. You can even in my Facebook group share your experience without having to post any images. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments or send me a message, whatever feels good. And I hope to make a couple more videos maybe on this topic, maybe even on drawing from the mind, and possibly of me messing up a bunch of stuff and recording it for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.